Okay, good morning. We'll devote the shir for the Refuah Shlema of Yehuda Ari ben Chaya Rachel. Refuah Shlema b'toch Shar Cholei Yisrael. We'll do B'ezrat Hashem some Pesach issues. This week we'll do just in general all kinds of chametz issues, and maybe touch a little bit about Leila Seder, or maybe just next week. And next week we'll mainly focus on the unique situation, the unique timing this year that Leila Seder falls on Motzei Shabbat, so that the most hectic day of the year, Erev Pesach, will be on Shabbat. So we'll see how to deal with it with all the special halachos involved, whether it's the idea of how do we get rid of the last chametz on Shabbat itself? What do we say when we do so? How do we sell? And when do we sell the chametz? Do we include the chametz that we leave over for Shabbat to eat, or we don't include it? And some other points, of course, Sudash Lishit. How do we fulfill Sudash Lishit on such a Shabbos? Yeah, a lot of hi, good morning. A lot of details special for this Shabbat and preparation from Shabbat to Leila Seder, and so on and so forth. Okay, so firstly we'll start with the Dvar Torah as usual. Try to keep it short, and then Pesach stuff, the chametz issues. So this past Shabbat, we read Parshat Kitisa and Parshat Para in addition. Parshat Kitisa mainly focuses, unfortunately, on the terrible sin of the golden calf, Chet HaEgel. A lot was said to explain what happened there. Firstly, it's interesting the position it's in, this parsha. It's between Truma Tetzaveh, which commands us of the Mishkan and how to build it, and all the different kelim, the vessels of the Mishkan, and the garments of the Kohanim to prepare them, and how they actually started using the Mishkan in the 7 days of Shivat Yemei Miluim. And then, coming after this parsha, after Kitisa, we have Vayakel Pkudei, which actually is a repetition of Trumat Tetzaveh, almost exact same wording, just this time the way they actualized their commandment, the commandments to build the Mishkan and its kelim and all the Bigdei Kehuna. So the question is, why is this interruption between the commandment and the actual doing of it, fulfilling of it? Why is it interrupted with Chet HaEgel in between? It may have happened in that sequence, or even not. Some Rishonim say Ein Mukdam Meuchar b'Torah, and really the Mishkan, they were commanded on the Mishkan after Chet HaEgel. So that even increases the question: why place Chet HaEgel in between? So a thought that may be is that this comes to teach us that many times a person has a vision, has a plan, has a goal to reach, which is excellent. That's what we should all be striving for, having something to look forward to and progress and create and reach a destination that we're aiming for. But many times on the way, there are different challenges, there are different difficulties that we weren't aware of. It may be the Satan that's trying to interfere, trying to block us from reaching higher levels. Whatever the reason may be, there are pitfalls on the way. And that's what the Torah is telling us. Between the commandment of the Mishkan and the actualization of it, there's Chet HaEgel, there's a downfall. And they overcame it. After all, in the end, they overcame it, and they continued and built the Mishkan in the end. So we always have to believe in our strengths and in the Siyata Dishmaya to reach our destination, even if on the way there are different challenges and difficulties and tests that we have to overcome. Yes. Yes. Okay. Uh-huh.
The tshuva comes before the chet. Tshuva would be even like if they were in sin.
Right. Rav Kook's famous.
It's just a fiskus. And the fiskus and the chet is not the nehut of the ben adam.
Uh-huh.
And it's exact same.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the same thing. He just like they took it one step deeper.
Uh-huh.
And like it's it's just like a mikra that it happens, but then
right.
you have to go back to
your truth, your real truth, internal truth.
And then you said.
Yeah. Very good. That's Rav Kook's idea about tshuva, that it's really an ongoing process of perfecting yourself. It's not the way we use the term to. Right. The way we use the term chozer b'tshuva today nowadays, a chozer b'tshuva, a person was once not religious and became religious, is really a deviation of the original term. The original term of tshuva, every religious person is in an ongoing tshuva process all his life. Right. As if you had to sin first in order to do tshuva. Right. Correct. Which doesn't mean Baalei Tshuva like in our days, those who once not religious. It means that Rabbi Elisha Vishlitsky once explained beautifully, those who always elevate themselves, always progress, are greater than tzaddikim gmurim. Tzaddik gamur means a person who believes he's finished, he's done. He's a tzaddik. I'm a tzaddik gamur. I don't need to progress anymore. He's never going to be on the level of a Baal Tshuva, a person who's always progressing. That's a nice idea. Yeah, right. With the Torah, exactly. So anyhow, the what was the sin itself? And this is something that can also teach us a very strong, powerful message for us, for our days, even though chas v'chila we're not involved in such a terrible sin like Chet HaEgel, but still we can learn from it. The Kuzari, or Buddha Levi, explains Chet HaEgel. After all, how can it be that after 40 days, less than 40 days after receiving the Torah and Mamad Har Sinai and seeing Hashem almost eye to eye, experiencing something that no one in the world ever or will ever experience like it was then, and yet within 40 days they stumble and fall to such a terrible sin like idol worshiping. Besides sounding stupid to say that a golden calf, who can believe in such a thing, that this is a God that took us out of Egypt? It sounds stupid, besides being a terrible sin. So the Kuzari explains that there's something totally different here. Their problem was not Avodah Zarah, or at least not obvious, clear-cut, simple idol worshiping. Their problem was, well, first we'll explain what their meaning, intent was, and then we'll explain what their problem with it was. Their intent was to worship Hashem. They totally continued to believe in Hashem as being the creator of the world, as being the one who took them out of Egypt, being the one who gave them the Torah, no question, and no question about that. Their issue was they needed an intermediate, emtsai, a means to worship Hashem. Since Hashem is completely spiritual, abstract, nothing tangent about Hashem, they needed some item, some inanimate object to help them worship Hashem. By the way, we do the exact same today. We have the Aron Kodesh, we have the Sefer Torah, we have the Tefillin, we have the Tzitzit, we have these objects that are holy objects. Aha, very nice. Who says that? Aha, very nice. The way you phrase it. Avodah Zarah or Avodah Zarah. Very good. Very good. Excellent idea. That's going to come up in a second. That's exactly how to explain it. Right. For telling what's going to be. So the Kuzari says they just needed a means to worship Hashem, as we use today so much. And actually, as the Mishkan itself was. The Mishkan itself has so many inanimate objects, holy objects that help us serve Hashem. Even in the Kodesh HaKodashim, the holiest of holy, we had the Keruvim. The golden calf is right there. The golden idols, so to speaking, not a calf, but of angels, female and male angels looking at each other, that looks like an idol. And it's in Kodesh HaKodashim. So what's the difference? Why were they wrong? What was so bad about what they did? And so terrible that they were meant to be demolished off the face of the earth. Emche otam, says Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu. He saves the day, but Hashem was willing to wipe them away. So the answer is, there's only one problem with what they did, but it's a major problem. They were not commanded. They never received such a commandment or permission to worship Hashem this way. True, it came moments later. The Mishkan came right after. Yom Kippur is when Moshe Rabbeinu came down with the second tablets after being forgiven for Chet HaEgel. And 4 days after Yom Kippur, they started building the Mishkan. That's what the Gra makes the calculation that Sukkot, Aleph Sukkot, was the beginning of creating the Mishkan. That's why, according to the Gra, that's how you celebrate Sukkot when we do. Because actually, what's the connection between Tet Vav Tishrei to a Sukkot that we sat in the Sukkot and that Hashem protected us in the desert? That happened right after Yetzias Mitzrayim. It should have been on Pesach. We should have been sitting in the Sukkah eating matzah. That would have been the correct timing of Sukkot. So the Torah explains that since anyway people go out, it's a season. The spring is a season that anyway people go out to the outdoor gardens, so you wouldn't be able to detect and tell that this is the mitzvah. But in the autumn, beginning of the winter, no one goes outdoors. So we do Sukkot, Dafka, and Tishrei to show that it's for mitzvah purpose. The Gra says something much more essential, much more basic. He says the Sukkot come to resemble the Hashrat Shechina around us, the Ananei Kavod, and the Shechina was present in the structure of the Mishkan. So the Mishkan had begun to be built on Sukkot at Vav Nisan, 4 days after Yom Kippur. What's that? Yeah, sure. It was finished by Aleph Nisan. It was finished, but they started building it at Vav Tishrei. They actually finished the whole building of the Sukkah on Aleph Nisan, right? Which actually isn't true either. They had finished it by Kafei Kislev. With the Vav Tishrei, the Kafei Kislev, that's Chanukah. And that resembles Chanukat HaMizbeach, Chanukat HaBayit. But they waited a few months till Aleph Nisan to actually to actually put it up. They had finished building everything they needed, but they put it up only on Aleph Nisan because it's the month that Yitzhak Avinu was born. There's all kinds of calculations. Anyway, back to our issue. So by not being commanded to worship Hashem a certain way, and people decide this is the way we'd like to worship Hashem, that's very, very bad. That means that we're making up the Torah. We're making up the way we want to serve Hashem. And that's not accepting Hashem as our ruler and as our commander and as the one who decides how to worship him. And this has to do actually with the concepts that we hear today. If it's the Reform Jewry who decided what mitzvot to accept, what mitzvot not to accept. If it's we hear from the young generation, some mitzvot they connect to, some mitzvot they don't connect to. The rationalizing of a mitzvah is good, is important, but you can never depend on it. You can never depend on understanding a mitzvah. You must fulfill the mitzvah with all its details, to its tiniest halachic detail, exactly as Hashem commanded us. Only that's the way to worship Hashem. The moment we deviate, the moment we change things, we decide what's good for us, what's not, we're not worshiping Hashem. We're worshiping ourselves. We are front and center, and we decide what we want to accept or not. Instead of Hashem being in the center, and us accepting what He has to tell us. That's the major problem with Chet HaEgel, the major issue of Chet HaEgel, which, as I said, continues till today, just not in the form of an idol, rather in the form of different ways of deciding what to fulfill, what not to fulfill which is actually the exact same as Chet HaEgel. If you think about it, that's why it's avodah zara. It's a strange way of worshiping Hashem. It's not the proper way. And finally, lastly, Para Aduma connects very, very well to all this. That's why it turns out that we most of the time read Parshas Para together with Chet HaEgel. Chazal say, Tavo Para utekanech tzoat benah. The egel, the calf, is the son of the offspring of the cow. So the cow will come and do kapara, serve as kapara for the egel, for its son that dirtied, made filthy the floor. So how is the kapara? How is the para aduma serving as kapara for Chet HaEgel? That's exactly it. The message of para aduma is that we do what Hashem commanded without any understanding. Shlomo HaMelech said, "Amati echkama vehi rechoka mimeni." I understood, says Shlomo HaMelech, I understood every single mitzvah. He was able to, with his brilliant mind, he was the wisest of all men to ever have been created, smartest man ever on earth, even more than Albert Einstein, even smarter than Albert Einstein. So he understood every single mitzvah, except for one. One mitzvah you just can't understand, and that's para aduma, say Chazal. Chazal explained as para aduma, that it purifies the impure and impurifies the pure. So it's something very awkward. So he didn't understand the para aduma. And the whole ritual of taking a totally red cow with only maximum one black hair. 2 black hairs already make it puzzle. And there was never harnessed, and you burn it, and the ashes you sprinkle with water. It's just something we can't understand. We can't fathom what's going on. So what is it meant to do? It's meant to show us you do whatever you're commanded without understanding. Chok. And that's the kapara for Chet HaEgel. That we accept Hashem totally. And we accept the Torah totally to every detail and do every halacha. And that's how we worship Hashem. And that gives us in the end the greatest connection, the greatest feeling, internal feeling that we're connected to Hashem. Okay, so that's with our Torah. Now let's do some Hilchos Pesach. So again, this week we'll do more general stuff. Next week we'll do specifically the mitzvah, the issue of Erev Pesach Shechal b'Shabbat, the fact that the 14th day of Nisan will be on Shabbat. How do we deal with all the different halachic details of such a situation? Okay. If it were last year, we should have mainly focused on the chapter of Hagalat Kelim, because last year a lot of people needed, it was last moment, whoever couldn't run out and get the pots and pans and dishes to use for Pesach, they had to do Hagalah, kasher their chametzik cutlery and dishes and pots and pans. This year, either it's all done and waiting, ready, available for Pesach, or you remember how to do it, or hopefully you won't even have a curfew again, lockdown, and we'll be able to even go out, whoever would like to spend Pesach somewhere out there. What's that? The Hagalah, yeah. Go back to the area doing the Hagalah, right. Okay, so we won't deal much with Hagalat Kelim. If there are any specific questions, gladly during the week or two coming up, you can gladly call and ask. Yeah. Okay, then I do want to speak about the chametz itself. We're not talking about the kelim, the chametz itself, the food itself. Okay. Okay, they're not selling it. Okay. So that I do want to discuss. So let's start exactly on that. Let's start on the halachic very stringent level of chametz. I'm not talking about the fact that when one eats chametz lo aleinu, it's chiyuv kares. It's a very terrible sin. But let's discuss firstly the fact of what are we meant to get rid of and how come. So firstly, from the Torah's point of view, this is something people may not know this difference. Mina Torah, midoraita, chametz is like any other food that gets nullified within 60 times as much as it is. If you have a crumb of chametz or a piece of chametz that fell into your chulent that you're preparing for Leila Seder or whatever, you can't have meat. No, dafka, cooked meat is fine. You can have a roasted, sli. Cooked meat is fine. So one can have chulent. So anyway, pot, I don't know, the soup. Into the soup pot, a crumb of chametz or a piece of chametz fell into the soup, dissolved totally. You can't see it. The moment you can see any isser that you can see, you have to take out. There's no bitul b'shishim. An isser never gets nullified when it's visible, when it's distinguishable. You take it out. But when you can't see it, it's dissolved or it looks exactly the same as other pieces of food in the pot, so you can't tell where the chametz piece is. So midoraita, from the Torah's point of view, it's nullified within 60. If there's 60 times as much as that piece of chametz that fell in, you assess approximately. If you can tell there's 60 times as much, then nothing happened. You can eat the entire pot, the food in the pot, and you're fine. Midiraban, rabbinically, midirabanan, the Chazal say, chametz asur b'mashu. Chametz is not allowed to be eaten, even if it's mashu, even if it's a crumb that fell into a huge, gigantic pot of a hotel. Okay, hotel is preparing food for their guests. Huge, gigantic pot. One crumb of chametz fell in. You can't find it. The whole pot goes to the garbage. The whole pot goes to the garbage. It's very, very severe, very stringent. We don't find that in any other isser in the world, that it's asur b'mashu like that. So firstly on that, what is the reason? How can we understand it halachically when there's no there's no remnants of it, there's no taste from it, nothing? Why should it make the entire pot asur to eat? So the Radbaz of 500, 600 years ago, the end of the Rishonim period, the Rabbi David ben Zimra, wrote a very, very, very extensive response of thousands of tshuvos. He was very, very heavy and well known in his days. So he wrote on this point, he said that he tried to figure it out halachically from any angle possible. Davar shesh lo matirin, lo batel, chatcharet kabed, all kinds of halachic concepts to try to explain it, and he couldn't come to any understanding halachically. So he said the only reason he can think of that Chazal decided it's so stringent is really more a philosophical answer. Because Chazal compare chametz to haseol shebayisa, chametz is compared to the seol shebayisa, which is the Yetzer Hara. And that's the idea of Pesach being free of Yetzer Hara. We're liberated. Chag HaCherut. What is the Cherut from? Not just from Egypt. Egypt only resembles evil, wickedness in the world. And we're freed from it. We try to be free of all wicked aspects, of all bad aspects in our life, in ourselves. We try to clean ourselves totally from Yetzer Hara. For 7 days, we're in Chag HaCherut. En lecha ben chorin ela misha osek b'Torah, meaning the liberation, internal liberation of being completely pure as much as we can without bad at all. So getting rid of the chametz is really telling us, get rid of the Yetzer Hara. Chametz resembles Yetzer Hara. Why is that? Because chametz is something that, the idea of chametz is that it puffs up, it elevates, it's meaning it rises. Thank you. It rises just due to the use of yeast and the heat and all that. So it resembles boastfulness. It's full of air, so to speaking. It's full of gas, but there's nothing to it. It's really the substance itself is the exact same as matzah. It just rises from nothing, because of the chemicals involved. So it comes to show us to be humble. Anav, like matzah, is small, is thin. Be humble. Not go to accessories, to unnecessary things, to motarot, like the chametz is when it rises and it has all kinds of tastes and flavors. That's in some way Yetzer Hara. When we're very simple, when our internal being is simple, we keep it simple to what we need. And being humble. That's the liberation of all the external issues that influence us. So says the Radbaz, that's why Chazal say that even mashu of chametz cannot be nullified on Pesach, and it has to be all thrown away because we don't even want mashu of Yetzer Hara in us. That's the idea. So it's interesting that Chazal implemented the philosophical idea behind chametz into halacha and made it the actual halacha. So that's one point that a reason we have to get rid of all chametz. Right. Also, the same reason Parshas Parah B'Chol Chodesh. Right. Right. Not to understand it all. Right. Yeah, that's true. Right. Okay. Now, what, after all, can be kept that has chametz in it during Pesach, and in some ways even sometimes can be consumed or benefited from during Pesach? So the rule goes like this. If it's an actual piece of chametz, not mixed in with something that makes it dissolved, it's dissolved in it, but it's actually a visible piece of chametz, then if it enters Pesach, ra'ui lema'achal kelev, even if it's inedible to human beings, but it's edible to an animal, to a dog specifically, but it's really any animal, then you must burn it and get rid of it before Pesach. Even if it's inedible to human beings, the moment it's edible to an animal, you must get rid of it before Pesach. We'll soon see the different ways of getting rid of, but that's considered chametz already. That mustn't be kept in our homes. We have to get rid of it before Pesach. If it's in a mixture before Pesach, the moment it enters Pesach, edible to an animal, when it's on its own, then it has to be burnt. You cannot now make it inedible for an animal and keep it. The moment it entered Pesach in a way that is edible to an animal, you have to burn it totally or get rid of it totally, dissolve it into, flush it down the toilet or whatever it is. You get rid of it totally. You can't just make it inedible for an animal and keep it in the house. That's completely demolished. If it's a mixture of the chametz mixed together with kosher products, and now it dissolved into it and you can't tell the chametz itself, then enough, if it's a mixture that's not edible, it's inedible to human beings. That's enough to keep it in the house. Even if it's edible to animals, that's enough because it was mixed together with other stuff and inedible now, then it's allowed. When do we come to such a situation? The main situation that could have chametz mixed in with other ingredients and inedible to human beings or even to animals is the whole entire issue of medicines, cosmetics, all those different types of things, soaps, shampoos, all those different types of things. They may have chametz ingredients in them, starch or other things, but they are in a mixture. You can't tell the chametz, you can't see the chametz there. They're mixed together with all the other ingredients, which makes up the pill or the syrup or the soap or whatever we're talking about. And therefore, it's enough that it's inedible to human beings even if it were edible to animals, it would be enough to allow us to keep it in the house on Pesach. And not only that, we could use it. Keeping in the house means there's no bali or bali matzeh, which in turn also leads to the fact that we could use it. Although it's not the simplest halacha, because I'll explain one more concept that is written in, it comes originally from the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, the father of the Tur, who came up with this comparing chametz to another topic in halacha, and he came up with this idea. So it's not so simple. We'll soon explain what he says, but it's still most of the time, after all, allowed. What's this concept that he came up with, the Rosh? It's called achshevei. Achshevei means we give it importance. How do we give something importance? So we could say by using it. If it's something that's usable, so it's important to us. We have cosmetics, we have sanitary stuff, we have medicines. Those are important items in our life. We need them, we use them. So says the Rosh, achshevei brings it back to being as if good chametz, edible, as if something that's positive and exists and is useful for us, so it's not allowed. But the Rosh tells us that it's only true that we have to be careful and aware of this concept of achshevei. It's only true when we eat something, we consume something through our mouth, and not any other use that benefits us. So if we're taking something that's really inedible to human beings and it's in a mixture, or even inedible to animals and it's alone, it's there on its own, but it's inedible even to animals, and we, after all, for some reason, consume it. After all, we eat it anyhow. Says the Rosh, that's the Isser of achshevei. We've now just made it for us, for ourselves, like a food, because we ate it anyhow, even though majority of people in the world would never touch such a thing. It's not something dangerous, of course. It's not something unhealthy or dangerous. It's something that's, let's say, extra burnt, and other people would not come near it and eat it, and someone decide, I want to eat it anyhow. So if it's a burnt piece of chametz and he eats it anyhow, that's achshevei. That means he's transgressing an Issur D'Rabbanan, a rabbinic prohibition, because from the Torah point of view, it's not food. Who cares if you eat it? You're not eating food. It's no longer chametz per se. But says the Rosh, D'Rabbanan, rabbinically, it's considered like food after all, because he decided to eat it. So it's on a personal, it becomes a personal sin to act a certain way by eating something that's inedible, makes it, for that person, a prohibition, a sin, a rabbinic sin. So according to that, using soaps or cosmetics that have some ingredient in them of chametz, but no one eats, no one consumes these type of things, hopefully. So that's not a problem at all. No issue. Shlomo Zalman says very, very clearly and distinctly that all cosmetics and all soaps and shampoos and detergents, whatever is used in that way, that's completely inedible, even if it has chametz ingredients in it, completely allowed. No problem. You don't need all those kashrus lists and things like that. One thing you could maybe be careful about is lipstick, because lipstick goes on your lips, and if it has chametz included in it, it could actually rub off onto the food that you're eating, and then you're swallowing it. And we said by swallowing, you're doing achshevei, even though it's inedible. No one eats above lipstick, but it could rub off onto the food you're eating or drinking, and it will come down into your body. You'll consume it in the end, and then that's achshevei. Although that itself is a great stringency, big chumrah, because you have no intent to eat it. What the Rosh meant of by achshevei, he meant if you decide now to sit down and eat something that's inedible, that's a problem. You're not deciding to eat the lipstick. It just may rub off by mistake. And you're not even aware that you're swallowing it. So that's not actually really. But the poskim say, because again of this special level of astringency in Chazal of mashu, even mashu is not allowed. It's a hara and all that we explained. So we're very extra stringent and careful about these things. So that's the only thing I would recommend, if possible, to use lipstick that has a kosher Pesach sign on it. The ingredients, not always do you know what they mean, because it says all kinds of words there. You have no idea what they are. So if you're if you understand what the ingredients are, they can check the ingredients, yes. Even though they're up to 3%, I think legally, up to 3%, if the ingredient is less than 3% of the item, they don't need to mark it even. They don't need to state it. I think in general, anything that's less than 3%, maybe, I don't know. You have to check, whatever. It's better to get something that has the sign on it. I see here, Tova is writing that MAC makeup has a kosher Pesach list. So you can get it through that. Okay.
I'm sure other stores have.
I'm not familiar with that. Oh, yeah? Okay. Aha, right. Yeah, Rivka said that's good for the masks. So we're not wearing lipstick anyway. Okay. So that's one thing. Now, by the way, the same stringency can be understood, even though, again, it makes almost no sense, but somewhat it could be understandable, is when plates we use. Plates that are not plastic plates, chad pa'ami plastic, because that has no chametz whatsoever, but the paper plates. Chad pa'ami, disposable paper plates, could have some starch coating over the plate that makes it smooth, makes it shine, all kinds of things. So that starch is chametz, comes from wheat. And when we're eating something hot, it can actually absorb the starch into the food, and then you're eating the food that has that chametz in it. And again, it's inedible for sure, for human beings and animals, but yet it's going into your body. You're eating it, you're consuming it, so it's actually. So these are the areas, the only areas, is that paper plates and lipstick are the only areas where we can be a little bit concerned about getting kosher Pesach. All the rest is phony. It's not necessary. We don't need kosher Pesach of all the other items that we don't eat and consume, and they're inedible. Now, by the way, chametz is asur b'achila and asur b'anach. Don't get me wrong. If it's an actual chametzik food that you apply as a cream, but it's edible chametz that you apply on your body and not eat it, not consume it, that's also that's forbidden. Forbidden deoraita, because benefiting from chametz is an issa deoraita. It's not just
Rev Steinberg?
eating. Yes.
I'm sorry. I bought napkins that say kosher lePesach. Is that why? Because you wipe your lips maybe with them?
Okay. Yeah, it's too low. It's too low. Yeah. I'll repeat.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear. Yeah, now I can hear better. Yeah. No, I heard your question. Napkins. You bought napkins, which are kosher lePesach napkins. That's. I don't even think that's necessary, because even when you wipe your mouth, you're wiping for a second. You're not necessarily swallowing anything at the time when.
Right. So why does it even say that? I thought it was ridiculous. Why does it even say that?
Why does it say that? That's a very, very good. My grandfather, my father's father, Alav Shalom, always made fun, and he said that they had before the war, he was already a rabbi, serving as a rabbi before the war in Poland, in Galicia, and he said the first time that someone came out with a kashrus emblem on something that did not need kashrus, rabbis came out very much against it. They said, "What are you doing? You're making fun of a halacha, of the necessity of keeping kosher. You're making fun of it. Giving kashrus to something that's not necessary is making fun of kashrus. And B, this is very deceiving, because people then will start believing in the fact that you need kashrus to all these things, and then they only buy items with the kashrus emblem on them, and then they pay more for it. So you're stealing. The kashrus, the people who give kashrus on such things and therefore raise the price, that's mamish stealing. So it's a good question. Why do they do it? It's a business act. Actually, it's a business.
Somebody else.
Right. Yeah, we said that.
No,
Yeah.
saying, so
Yeah.
now everyone got nervous. Oh, can I buy this plate? Can I buy this
Yeah.
plate? Can I buy this plate? So
Okay.
You know that plastic plates can't have it.
No problem,
The
right?
normal person
Doesn't know the
necessarily
difference.
that.
No, but I'm not talking about the normal
company that knows
person.
that everything is in there, the company that's making it and knows that there's nothing in it, they just buy kosher Pesach and then people will go and buy it. Otherwise, people may not buy it because they're already used to being told it as a kosher Pesach.
Okay, that's,
What happened was
I understand.
because they didn't end it back then, people
Right, they got used to it that you need
people
kashrus for all
buy it
these
on purpose.
things.
So people will literally, it works the other way.
Right.
They won't buy the product that doesn't say kosher Pesach because they're uneducated. So they didn't
Correct. Today, right. Today it's become, that's exactly what they were afraid of
Right, but they didn't
back
stop
then,
it.
but they didn't stop it. They couldn't stop it then, right? They couldn't stop it then. And now
People think the opposite.
people think that if you don't buy, right, if you don't buy something with kashrus, then you're doing something wrong on Pesach. Little do they know that it's not a problem in most cases, right? So we're stuck today with this, whoever isn't knowledgeable enough, is ignorant and doesn't understand what yes, what not. We're stuck today with having to buy the kosher Pesach stuff.
Educate.
Right. No, right. Those who do understand the proper thing, they don't look for it. And if already talking about all this, I just see Carol wrote, it's the same with foil, ridiculous. Correct? Correct. Tin foil, ridiculous also. No chametz involved at all. That even though that can wrap food sometimes, and even though it can be hot food wrapped with tin foil, but there's no chametz at all in the product. Period. So why would you need the kosher Pesach one? It just doesn't make sense. But again, the world became, as we said, ignorant on one side, and on the other side, like very chomradik. So they made it sound as if it's what? Oh, we'll get to the water in a second. But before that, I want to connect this to another very bad habit that has developed much more recently than giving kashrus on plastic plate. It developed in the last few years. I think it hasn't come to Ra'anana, Baruch Hashem, yet, but we have to try to make sure it doesn't. Which thing? Achshavei, to make something important, chashuv. Right. Another point is, chametz she'avar alav Pesach. Meaning, if someone kept chametz, so you know what? By this, I'll first explain before chametz alav Pesach. I'll first explain how come we get rid of all of chametz before Pesach. Right, that's what I'm going back to now. Correct. Now going back to the issues of how do we make sure that we're not having chametz, we're not keeping chametz in our possession on Pesach, because we mustn't even keep it in the home, not even besides using it or eating it, we mustn't keep it in the house because of Bali Bali Matzeh and because of a rabbinic decree, Shema Yavo Leochlo. You may by mistake, out of habit, by mistake, grab it and eat it on Pesach, so Chazal say don't keep anything in the house. The ways to get rid of the chametz, to make sure we don't have chametz in our home, besides the actual burning of it, or dissolving it and flushing it down the toilet, whichever way you get rid of it totally. Besides that way, that's the best way, of course. Besides doing that, we have three different techniques. One is bitul. Sorry, it's actually bitul, biur, and mechira. Biur is what I said before, to get rid of it actually. It's no longer existing in the world. Bitul is the phrase we say after we do bdika and after we do biur. We say, kol chamira v'chamia deika birshute, de chazite, or de la chazite, de biate, de la biate, libatel v'levehefker ke'afra ve'ara. We're saying any chametz that may still exist in the house, we are now canceling it totally. It's no longer chametz. What do we mean? What's that? That we'll do next week. When do we say that? We'll do that next week. No, we actually can say it on Shabbat also. We're allowed to say it on Shabbat also. Yeah, it's not going to be an issue, right? We're saying two things in this line here. By the way, it's in Aramaic. So some people don't even understand what they're saying, which is very bad. If someone doesn't understand, they should say it in English or Hebrew. There's no holiness to say in Aramaic. It's It's a thing that was made up in the days of Bavel. So, and then like the Gemara is all Aramaic because that's what they spoke. That was a spoken language in those days. People may think that it's in order to make it difficult. No, it's just because simply that was the language they used in those days. So here also, this was made up in those days. So they use Aramaic. That was a common language. Today, say it in English or in Hebrew. Many Sidurim have that translation already of it, so just say it in English. Anyhow, what it says there is that we nullify the chametz. We're canceling it from being a food. We're considering it in our mind. We're considering it as afar be'alma, says Rashi. In Psachim Daled, Rashi explains the bitul means that we're considering it as if it's dust, as if it's earth, it's nothing, it's garbage. So even though it's a perfectly edible, delicious food, but for these 7 days of Pesach, we're considering it as dust, as dirt, as nothing. That's Rashi's idea of what bitul means. Tosfos say that bitul is really hefker. We're actually being mafkir. We're making it free for all. Everyone can take it. The moment it's hefker, so we don't possess it anymore. It's not ours, so we're not over bali matzeh, because bali matzeh, it says, lo yira'eh lecha chametz, v'lo yira'eh lecha seor b'chol gevulecha. Only if it's yours, you mustn't keep it. If it's not yours, you're allowed to have it in your house. For example, if someone has, he's safekeeping a package that someone gave him to keep for a while, and in that package is chametz, the person who's safekeeping it doesn't have a problem there because it's not his. Although it's complicated because we won't get into it, but in general, it's okay. Specifically, it has to be more done in order to allow it to keep it in the house. But hefker definitely makes it not yours anymore. So for those 7 days, you're saying it's mafkir. Libaten? Yeah. Definitely. No question. If you have a housekeeper who's a goy, even if she's Jewish, but she's not religious, whatever, if it's her domain, if it's her room, and she possesses it only, it's not yours that she can use. Right, but no, but we're talking about the chametz itself. Who owns the chametz itself? Right, she owns the chametz itself. Right, so it's okay. She can keep it in the house. Definitely. She can keep it in the house because it's not yours. So you're not over a bali matzeh. Now, but the problem with all this is that Chazal were afraid of two things. A, shema lo bitlo belev shalem. The bitul, it sounds very nice halachically, but the truth of the matter is, if you ask the person truthfully, if you put him on a mechonat emet, polygraph? No. Yeah? Polygraph? Okay. Right, the machine that detects if you're saying the truth or not. So if you say that, kol chamira v'chamira de'ika b'yeshute, you say that very, very strong and you're davening and praying as if it's a prayer. It's not a prayer at all. That's what some people think. It's like saying Tehillim or something like, but they have to understand what they're saying. So you're saying it with all your heart, but really, 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 if you ask the person, are you really mafkir it? Is it really a free-for-all? Can everyone take it? Or are you really considering it as dirt? If it's a delicious package of bisli or something, or whiskey, that's pure total chametz, and it's totally edible, and some people love it. So they're really making it ke'afra be'alma. It may not really be true in our minds, in our feelings that we're doing it properly, and therefore Chazal weren't so pleased with just depending on bitul chametz. Therefore, we added the mechiras chametz. The mechiras chametz comes and says like this: yes, we consider this chametz. It's a good bottle of whiskey. It's a good package of bisli. It's good stuff. But so besides everything, the bdika, the bitul, the biur, besides all that, we also do the mechira, which comes to say that we realize that it's chametz and it's ours, and we're not sure if it's really our full intent and true feeling that it's nothing, nullified and nothing and not worth anything. So we sell it to a goy. The moment it's sold to a goy, then again, it's not ours. If it's not ours, we're not over Bali Bali Matzeh. Of course, we mustn't eat it. We mustn't use it. Now it's a double sin if we use it or eat it. A, we're using chametz now because it now becomes ours because we stole it. B, we're stealing from the goy. It's gezel goy. So it's a double problem now not to touch it. But anyhow, since Chazal were afraid that even if it's sold to the goy, you may by mistake or sometimes intentionally when you can't help yourself and take some of it to eat. So they said, besides the sale and besides the bitul and the bdika and everything else we do, you must lock it behind a door or a cupboard and paste it. Make sure that it's away from your eyesight, from any cupboard you use on Pesach. It should not be entering at all the location where the chametz is. Hence, you may, by mistake or intentionally, take from it and use it. Shlomo Zalman says that for that reason, because we also sell, the sale itself is also very uncertain in a way that it's hard to figure out what type of action sells something to a goy. We're used to selling to a goy anything that he takes for himself. That we know how to sell. Money is very good. Shtar. There are all kinds of ways to sell to a goy. But when we're keeping the item by us and just the transaction is made remotely, he's not even in our home to sign a contract or to take it for himself or to pay for it. Remotely, it's done by all these signatures to the Rabbanut, and the Rabbanut sells it for us. That's something that's not so sure that it works halachically. I'm not talking about now the fact that you may not be sincere about it. Dafka on this sale, we're sincere because if he wants it, he has to pay for it as much as it costs. So what do we care? If he knocks at our door on Chol Hamoed one day of Pesach and says, "I saw your signature. You live in this location address. I want my chametz now. You sold it to me. So you go ahead, take it. Fine. Just pay us the exact amount that it costs us to buy it, because that's what a sale is all about. He has to pay for it. Of course. That's what we have on all the forms. We sign our address. Not only that, Shlomo Zalman was very careful to make sure on the form that, exact address, the dirah and everything, and explaining to the goy where in the cupboards it is, the corner here. So some of us, right, exactly where it is in the cupboard. I know, but if you add a star, you can add whatever you'd like. That's what I do personally. Right, it would be part of the form that you would say exactly where it is. Right, exactly. Or in the freezer, in this closed section of the freezer, or whatever. Yeah, that's very general. It's the address, signature, and that's it. So Shlomo Zalman definitely did. He gave the details of where it is, and besides, I don't know if he speaks about this, but there are poskim who say this, which is something that's, again, if you want to make it as literal as possible, like it's real. So let's say you're away for 3 days during Pesach. You're away 3 days, or definitely if you're away the entire Pesach, and you've sold, how in the world can he get that chametz? If he comes and knocks at the door, no one's home. So on the form, you don't have to write this on the door. On the form, you could add, on this and this day, or whenever I'm not home. Whenever I'm not home, you don't have to explain the dates. If I'm not home, the key is by my neighbor in this and this address. You add that to the form. What? Your own phone number. How is that going to help? If you're in Tveria now in a hotel, and then you can ask where the key is. Okay, that's fine too, right? If you have your phone number.
A worker wants to come, I'll give you a hafrash. They call you and then you make sure.
Right, but then the problem with that is Yom Tov. What do you do with Yom Tov? You can't answer the phone. So the first and last days of Pesach, the first and seventh day, he needs to get to it no matter what, even if you can't answer the phone. So that's why you need to write on the form. The key is by my neighbor. You have to make sure the neighbor would be home those days that you aren't, because otherwise, what is that helpful? So I always check in with our next door neighbor what days they're in, and for away for a certain day, I write the key is by this person, and he has it for all 7 days, and then you can always get it. So this makes it very real in our minds, and that's how it should be. It should be very real, and we're willing to give it away because he'll pay for it. After all this, okay, we did bdika, bitul, biur, and mechira. After all of this, what is the problem with keeping actual real chametz? I'm not talking about now tarovet chametz, when chametz is mixed in with a food that is dissolved and we can't even tell that there's chametz here. That's definitely allowed to now keep in the house. Of course, we mustn't eat it no way because it's edible. But keeping it in the house is fine after doing all of this, the bitul, beer, and mechira, then it's fine to keep it in the house. But chametz gamor, if we have crackers, bisli, whiskey, cookies, all those things that are chametz gamor, pasta, chametz gamor stuff, couscous, packages of stuff like that, why do the poskim still prefer and recommend that we don't leave in the house chametz gamor? After doing all of that, what could go wrong? It's all done. It's all gotten rid of. So the concern is the following. A, we said that the bitul may not be sincere. The fact that you consider it as if it's garbage, but it really isn't. So it may not be true in your heart. And hefker not either. The mechira, although we said we freely and comfortably wish to sell it to the guy, because when he wants to take it, he has to pay for it. So what do we care? We'll get the money. We'll get fresh pasta after Pesach. It's even better. Why use the week-old pasta? We now get the money for it and we get the new ones. So it's even better for us. The problem with it is that we're not sure, halachically, purely halachic, that we're not sure, as I said before, what is the form of selling something to a goy when he doesn't even come to our door, pay for it, take it to himself. The way of selling such a thing, kinyan sudar, kinyan chazaka, kinyan chatzer, there's all different types of ways, shtar, kesef, all these ways. There's Ksota Choshen, which is one of the greatest commentators on the Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat. In Siman Kuf Tzadik Dar in Choshen Mishpat, 194 in Choshen Mishpat, has a very extensive discussion of how do we sell our chametz to the goy without him actually taking it for himself and paying for it. Very complicated. So the poskim say, since we're not certain that the sale works, here it's not the problem of not believing in it or not really sincerely selling it to him. We're sincere about it, but we're just not sure logically what the procedure should be. The logical procedure is uncertain. Therefore, leaving chametz gamor in the house, which is like the real problem of lot balei or balei matzeh, and it may be that it's still owned by you because the sale never worked. So therefore, poskim say, make sure you get rid of chametz gamor, unless it's hefsed gadol, hefsed merubeh. If it's something that's a big loss because it's expensive, and just to throw it away before Pesach is a shame because it's expensive, for that the poskim allow to rely on the mechira or bitul and all that we did. Because it's hefsed gadol, so we weigh the situation, we say for that, we rely on all that we've done. That's how it works, and that's why we prefer not. Definitely. Definitely. For example, the fact that we said before that if it's chametz gamor and it's inedible to human beings, but it's edible to an animal, it's still a isur chametz doraita. Whereas if it's tarovet, it's already a lower level of an isur. Right. And some cases it's doraita, some cases it's derabbanan, but it's in any case it's the lower level of doraita. Even if it is doraita, it depends if there's kazait b'chdei achilat pras within the tarovet. If there's the amount of kazait of chametz within 4 minutes of eating that mixture, you would eat a kazait, that would mean that you have a deraita problem now with it, but it's still lower level than actual piece of chametz. It's not in the tarovet. It's not in the mixture, because it's enough that it becomes inedible to human beings in order to allow to keep it in the house. You need to have it inedible to animals. Whereas if it's chametz gamar, it has to be inedible to animals if you want to keep it without doing all the mechira, bitul, biur, dika, all that we said before. Okay, I have to finish with 2 more last things. I forgot the medicine. The medicine issue, which is similar to what we said with cosmetics, soap, shampoos, except for one difference. That you are swallowing, taking that into your body and consuming. So we would think that even if it has inedible chametz in it, it should still be problematic because of the point of view of achshave, because we're consuming it, so we're giving it its importance. So going back to that, I'm sorry, I forgot to explain what about medicines of all types. So true that if it has some taste, some flavor, good flavor, that you have to have kosher lePesach sign on it, because if it has good flavor, then you're actually drinking. It's usually the syrup, or if it's a candy that you suck on for your sore throat, it's tasty. So there you have to have a kosher lePesach for it, because there it's a food, it's edible. And if it has a chametz ingredient in it, so you're consuming chametz. Now, although it probably is less than kazai b'dechilat pras in a mixture, so it's only rabbinically forbidden, but still you're not allowed to do it. So that you definitely have to have kosher lePesach. But if it's a pill you swallow, or a syrup that's very bitter, you don't enjoy it at all, bitter syrup or pill you swallow. So here we have various different opinions. Moshe Feinstein says something, Chazaniah says something, Zaman says something. Various different opinions of how to halachically decide on this. I know that there are lists and lists of the badats and the rabbanut who give lists and lists of the medicines which has chametz in it, which doesn't have chametz, which has kashrus lePesach for it, which doesn't have kashrus lePesach. There are lists and lists that come out before Pesach. But the truth of the matter is, we'll go straight to Shlomo Zalman. That's where we tend to use for Psak Halacha. Shlomo Zalman says, again, if it's tasteless and you just swallow it, he says there's no need for kosher lePesach, even if there's chametz inside. Even if one of the ingredients is chametz, and where he's even more lenient than others, more lenient than Reb Moshe Feinstein, is that even if the medicinal ingredient, the ingredient that gives you the cure, you're using it just for that, is chametz, is a derivative of chametz, it's still allowed according to Shlomo Zalman. Why isn't it a problem of achshave? After all, you're giving this chametz importance because you wish to consume this medicine for that purpose of that chametz ingredient to cure you. So that's the greatest form of importance you're giving it. Why isn't that a problem? Says of Shlomo Zalman, because we're not eating it. The Rosh, as recalled, says that achshave only works when you eat something. As you apply it on your body, that even though you're considering it something important because it's useful for you, but it's not to the point of inedible chametz to become as if edible because you're using it. Use of something is not achshave. It's not enough to consider it giving it importance. I'll get to that in a second. But a medicine, you're not eating, you're using. What's the difference? Says of Shlomo Zalman, a food you chew first. Before you swallow, you chew the food. Now, even if you would take a small piece of, let's say, shaked marak, one soup nut, yellow, small, tiny soup nut, and swallow it down on Pesach, that's isu deoraita. He doesn't care if you actually chew and then swallow, or you swallow it down. He means something that normally you chew, because it's a food, that cannot be consumed on Pesach, no matter if you swallow it down or chew it. But if it's something you never chew, so it's never a food. So you're just using the medicine, like applying it on your body. The fact that it goes into your body doesn't make a difference. You're not eating it. And therefore, It's not a problem achshavei, and therefore you could use any type medicine that you swallow without chewing, and it's tasteless. You can use that on Pesach without kasher lePesach. Without kasher lePesach, you don't need even the emblem saying that it's kosher lePesach. But again, if it's something you do suck, chew, drink, and it has taste, flavor to it, then it has to have kosher lePesach on it. If it's a bad flavor, actually, if you're drinking a syrup with a bad flavor, that could be achshavei, because then you are drinking it normally like you would any other drink. So that could be a problem. That, maybe I take it back, that should have kasher lePesach on it. But if you're swallowing a pill, that's when it comes into action. When you're swallowing a pill, that needs no kasher lePesach whatsoever. Doesn't matter for what reason and for what ingredient and what ingredients it has in it. Toothpaste, poskim say that it may be wiser to have kasher lePesach on it, although if you do swallow, you definitely don't intend on it, and it's not something you eat, you enjoy eating, it just goes by mistake. Truth of the matter is, it probably doesn't need kasher lePesach, but it's more comfortable if it has, because you're, after all, maybe swallowing some of it normally, not as a pill that you swallow down without chewing. Here you're normally sort of drinking it down by mistake. It flows down your throat, so it most probably should have kashrus lePesach on your toothpaste or mouthwash. That's definitely important. And very, very last point. I know it's over time. Whoever needs to go, of course, can leave. Just last point I said I would mention. Chametz she'avar alav Pesach. If someone kept chametz at home without selling it, even if he had done bitul and biur and dika, all the rest of the stuff he did, but he kept some chametz at home without selling it, that chametz rabbinically is forbidden to eat and enjoy from after Pesach. That's called chametz she'avar alav Pesach. Chazal instituted a decree that we mustn't eat chametz that has gone over Pesach without selling it to a goy. After selling it to a goy, then obviously you can enjoy it and eat it after Pesach. The moment the Rabbanut buys it back from the goy, half an hour after Pesach, then you can start eating your chametz as much as you'd like. There's a new chumrah of recent years that came out. Someone made this up and he was successful. It was a nice startup. Thousands of people go by it today, where they refused to buy any chametz that was in the shop, was in the store over Pesach, even if the store has a certificate pasted on the wall that they sold their chametz. A lot of people refuse to buy it today. They have on the packages that come out after Pesach. Again, Ra'anana, it's not so common, but if you go to Yerushalayim, Bnei Brak, you'll see in all the superstars, you'll see that the packages, some of them have them, Ne'efa le'achar Pesach, written very, very large letters, Ne'efa le'achar Pesach. Some of them are even extra chumrah. They write, Nitchan mikem, Ne'efa mikemach shenitchan le'achar Pesach. That even the flour being used was grinded after Pesach. What's that? That's besides the point. The flour itself may not be chametz. That's not so simple, because the way they make it today, they say it's different than once. They have what we call letita. That means, I don't know if it's boiled in water or by steam. They steam it. The flour gets steamed. And that's a form of water also, which may make it chametz after all. So today I wouldn't keep a closed package even of flour in the house, because it may be chametz gomer. The way they manufacture it today may be chametz gomer. It used to be that it wasn't chametz. Today, nowadays, I'm not so sure. I have to check it year by year. Anyhow, back to chametz alav Pesach. Says Reb Shlomo Zalman, it's completely wrong. He says there's no such thing. The moment the shop owner did what he was supposed to, he sold his chametz, and it's a hefsed merubeh for him. He has so much chametz left over before Pesach, he can't throw it all away. So he says, by not buying that from him, that's a chumrah dat kula. You're making him lose money now for no reason, because we hold that he did what he was supposed to. He did what the rabbinate told him, even if their problem, those who are stringent on this point, they feel that the shop owners are sometimes chilonim, and the chilonim have no idea what's flying. They just did something the rabbinate told them. and then it doesn't really work. They don't know that they're selling their chametz. Says Rav Shlomo Zalman that doesn't matter, because the decree of Chazal was if a person ignores the fact that it's Pesach, he doesn't do anything to take care of Pesach, then their decree was you mustn't use it. But the moment he did what he was told in order to take care of the chametz before Pesach, what do you want from him? He did what he's supposed to, so Chazal no longer instituted their decree on that. And I even saw in a book by an ultra Haredi rabbi in Ofakim, Rav Chesner, who writes in his book, in the back of the book, he has a whole additional part there, section where he writes chumrot that makes no sense. And it's a Haredi rabbi in Ofakim who writes this whole list of chumrot that make no sense. And one of them is this. He says it's become common, mainly in the Haredi world, not to buy any chametz that was sold before Pesach in stores and shops. He says, besides being terribly wrong because it's not halachic in any way, he says what happens is the shop owners aren't firing, as we say. They're not going to lose their money because of that. What they do is they store it in their storage rooms for 2 months after Pesach. Then they bring it out. No one knows the difference. No one's going to check now that it was there before Pesach. And now the people buy old stuff that could be now with worms or bugs or insects because it was kept for a longer time in storage. So they're doing a much greater issur eating that than eating it after Pesach when it was sold. So we see that's a totally wrong chumrah. But I can tell you, if I go to Osherad after Pesach, and I reach for the pasta that doesn't have this Kiddush Levanah sign on it, Ne'efal Lachar Pesach, I'm looked upon as a chiloni. Like, no one else would touch it, take from it. Yes, so you have to go to Ranana first, and a few months after Pesach, and then go there. Right. So it's something that makes zero sense, and it's totally wrong. So you can keep on buying in shops. We have to make sure you have to make sure that they sell their chametz. That, of course, obviously important to see, but if you see that, then you're fine with buying anything there. Okay, Kol Tuv. In the meantime, Shavua Tov. Next week, we'll discuss the Shabbos Erev Pesach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, very welcome. Kol Tuv. Bye-bye.